Recognizing 100th anniversary of American Physical Therapy Association.
Senior Senator from the 4th.
I'm very blessed to have been part of the profession of physical therapy. So the profession of physical therapy was born out of the world being in crisis and our country being in crisis. This resolution recognizes that in the time that this profession is now been asked to stand up and be there when we have a nation in crisis. Reconstruction aides are the predecessors to modern physical therapists, and they were treating the casualties of World War I. They worked to get soldiers back on their feet, and these women, because they were all women that were the reconstruction aides, had proven their value as medical professionals, war heroes, and shown that they would eventually be known as physical therapists to have a major role to play in the future of America's health. Mary McMillian, she was a reconstruction aide and was elected in 1921, 100 years ago, to be the first president of the American Women's Physical Therapeutic Association. Emma Vogel was initiated in the first War Emergency Training Council for World War II at Walter Reed General Hospital in 1941. That course consisted of 6 months of concentrated didactic instruction to be followed by 6 months of supervised practice at the military hospital. Then the West Virginia Physical Therapy Association was actually incorporated 28 years after the American Physical Therapy Association here in Morgantown in 1949. When polio hit, we had Lucy Blair, staff coordinator of the physical therapist, stood up and worked in partnership with Dr. Salk in the national response to the polio epidemic in the 1950s. We went on to now recently, there's a lot of other stuff I'm going to move past just a second here within West Virginia, but most recently in the COVID epidemic, many of us have seen family and friends hospitalized over COVID, and the physical therapists here in West Virginia have been working in that response throughout as essential personnel, both in a hospital setting or nursing home settings and in our outpatient settings, to get our family and friends back on their feet through this, once again, world crisis and national crisis in responding here in West Virginia. I'm very proud of those physical therapists. I'm very proud of the association that promotes that profession, so I strongly urge adoption of the resolution.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of this resolution today. You know, there's nobody more important to an injured person than a physical therapist. Whether it's a sports injury or a car wreck, they're critical to getting people back to 100%, and that's what healthcare is all about. I've known many physical therapists in my career. I just want to mention a couple because they put the well-being of their patients before anything else. Joe Manchin, not the senator, but the uncle. Joe Manchin was a physical therapist in Clarksburg, West Virginia before anybody knew what physical therapy was. I can remember going there as a young boy getting hurt in Pop Warner and went in and he worked on my ankle like I was a pro football player, that nothing was more important than to get me back on the field. And 90% of the people he never charged a penny to because their health was more important than any amount of money. Harry Dean, somebody we're considering a bridge resolution today, when he came back from the war, he started working on his physical therapy degree and set up a children's hospital where children could receive free physical therapy in Harrison County for decades. That was his legacy. Mr. President, I stand in support of this bill for all physical therapists in West Virginia and throughout this country. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Marion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to talk about a personal experience that I had where I learned about the importance of physical therapy to a dear friend of mine. It was August 14th, 2019. Myself and two friends were on a motorcycle ride. We was traveling Route 16 through McDowell County. We came up on an intersection. My best friend in life, he was the best man at my wedding 41 years ago. We've been best friends since junior high, was on the motorcycle directly in front of me. A Jeep Renegade pulled out into our lane and hit my best friend head on. I watched him fly through the air. I watched that motorcycle explode, and how I maneuvered through that wreckage without going down with him was only by the grace of God. When I got off of my motorcycle and ran up to him, I never thought I'd see my friend alive again. I never thought that day would ever happen. I thought no one could survive what I just witnessed. He was alive. We had no cell service. It took over an hour to get an ambulance there. They life-flighted him to 2 different hospitals. When myself and my other friend finally caught up with him, he was at the Johnson City Medical Center in Johnson City, Tennessee. He had shattered his pelvis. He about bled out 2 times. And he shattered his right ankle. But he was alive. It was touch and go, but he was alive. The surgeons did a tremendous job. If you look at those x-rays and you see the reconstruction they did on his pelvis, it was nothing short of a miracle. But they didn't know if he would ever walk again. He stayed in that medical center for 2 or 3 weeks. I stayed there with him. I never left him. We got him home. He spent 45 days in a nursing home and went through extensive physical therapy. And I went to that nursing home every day in the morning and took him coffee, and we had coffee together, and I watched the work of his physical therapist. And I was truly amazed at how far he was coming along. He got out of that hospital out of that nursing home in 45 days, and the physical therapy started at home. And it went on for the better part of a year. But Mr. President, because of the good work of that physical therapist, my best friend in life is not only walking again, he's riding motorcycles again. He has a lot of pain that he's managing, but he's walking again, and he has a good quality of life, I believe, because of the physical therapy that he received. And my hat is off to this profession, one I never knew much about, quite frankly, until this happened, but one I'm very thankful that we have in West Virginia. Mr. President, I'm honored to be a co-sponsor of this resolution and a yes vote. Thank you.
Are there others who desire to speak to the resolution? The junior senator from the 8th is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I was not able to, or it slipped by me to become a co-sponsor of this resolution, but I wanted to stand up in support of it because physical therapists are essential to the work that physicians do in getting patients back up on their feet. Since we're in the practice of sharing personal experiences, I just want to say when I was 15 years old, I was involved in a pretty horrific accident and I almost lost my left foot. The expectation was that I would get to a point where I could ambulate correctly but never play sports again. And that was important, or that saved my heart. I was heartbroken over it at the time because I ran track, I played football, I played baseball, and the life without sports was not very good. I didn't like that idea, but I worked with a physical therapist at CAMC for 6 months to rehabilitate my left leg and ankle, and I went on to play high school football, lacrosse, and college lacrosse all 4 years. So I rise in support of this resolution. Again, the work they do with physicians is just amazing work. Thank you.
Further discussion. Senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't intend to rise today, but that's the point of this, is that I think everybody knows that I was in an automobile accident last year, and I couldn't walk. I could barely get around this place. and it was pretty bad. I'm here today, though, and able to rise because of physical therapists that made it so that, I'll never forget this. I could barely lift my leg off the table, and they helped me do that. And the difference that it has actually made in my life, and I'd never had physical therapy before. So I had no understanding or little understanding on what it was capable of doing. These people actually changed my life and made it so that I could get my life back that I once had. And it was worth it so much so that I felt compelled to leave the chair up there and come back and share that experience with everyone in commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the physical therapist. Again, it was a struggle. The pain that was involved with it when you were doing it was also worth it. It was worth it because each time got a little better, a little better. It made it so that it wasn't necessary for painkillers. It made it so that I could go back to work. I could go back to work in a physical nature. And that's a big deal because my life is a physical life on my day job. And I was able to go to do the work. Now, it gets interesting. And that is right before the session, I started having problems with my hip again. And I went to physical therapy, and they were able to determine what was going on, and they helped me out, and so that I was able to come back and be able to walk around. And you've seen me on a cane a little bit this session. You know why? Because I don't have time enough to get back to physical therapy. That is how valuable it is, or how valuable it was in my life. And I'm quite certain it's been that valuable to not hundreds of thousands, but millions and millions of people throughout this great country. So it's an honor and privilege to stand up here and say that I support this resolution and can't wait to vote for it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is on adoption of the resolution. All those in favor of adoption say aye. Aye. Opposed? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. I declare the resolution adopted.